Or good afternoon. Welcome to Progressive Soup. My name is David Stevenson. Dan Lanzilotta, chef. Without the comma in between. We were talking a little bit about Occupy Wall Street, but we've both been down there. We've seen the self-contained community that they have there with people in tents, sleeping in sleeping bags in tents. Wonderful food tables, not just folks bringing in stuff, not just local restaurateurs donating food like a lot of them have, but also they've got a pretty interesting food preparation system there, which you saw, and a lot of it's vegetarian. And unfortunately, when I was there and going through the food line, somebody asked, "Is there anything vegan?" And unfortunately, the answer was no, nothing vegan. Sorry, vegetarian. Or oh, here comes the pizza guy with 100 pizzas, and everybody was happy. So they got their pizza, they got their salads, they got their fruits and vegetables and a lot of good stuff. What did you see in terms of the food that's there?
Well, just a slight correction. I went after everyone left.
You were there after they
Right.
evicted everybody.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I went down, and just for curiosity's sake, in our earlier conversation, I do support the premise of Occupy Wall Street, but I would like it really to take root or hold of this culture in a way that wakes people up in ways that they're not being woken up. I mean, we still have a lot of work to do in this culture. There are a lot of people hurting out there, and I know I feel the pinch myself, and I just think that it's not where it should be yet. We're still being... We could. The good thing is you could still get... People can eat. You could still get a hamburger for $1.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that the right thing? In my opinion, no.
Right.
Why is it $1? That's a bigger question. You know, that has to do with big agriculture and big corporations and how they
And a hamburger that, as I understand it, is about 75% corn.
Right. It's all based on corn.
It's all fattener.
Right.
So
exactly.
Corn-fed cattle.
Right. It's exactly correct answer. Okay, but aside, there are many places in the world where people don't even get that to eat. So I think we have to get to a point where the average person in this culture has a free education. Instead of funding wars, we fund minds and solutions. And we're not even close to that. We can't even get people to have the notion or a feeling of safety in their mind if they're pregnant and they have a job and they need to take off and have a child.
Right.
And rear a child for a few weeks or months and still know that they go back to a job.
Well, there's a law that protects them on that.
Some, but in other cultures in Northern Europe, where there's a whole culture based on that safety idea that families can you can have a family, still take care of your child with some dignity and some humanity, and still have health insurance and still be able to participate and foster a child and be active in a community that you're contributing to. We don't do that here. You know, not many folks in the lower income bracket in this country can take off and not worry about, you know, finding a job once they go. They don't have. There's no daycare. I mean, there's zero daycare.
Yeah.
I mean, daycare in itself is a crazy thing in this culture. The cost of daycare for single moms or single dads or families in general is astronomical. So how do you take care of the child? That's the future of a culture that essentially says, we don't really care about you.
And if you've got two incomes in a family and one of them is kind of a low level income, you're very possibly just trading that income for daycare.
Exactly. And you're trading nutrition. You're trading off the ability for the main breadwinner, and it's not necessarily the man in the family anymore.
Right.
But if somebody traveling for 2 or 3 hours or driving an hour and a half to a job, and then driving an hour and a half back. So the fossil fuel, the carbon footprint of that family is astronomical. The child is not getting the benefit of having both parents rear the child because one of them is going to be away for a whole bunch of time.
Good bit of the day. Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that need to be worked out in the culture in terms of keeping that unit intact. And we're not doing a very good job of it.
We've talked a lot about your upbringing in the Bronx, and the little family farm, we'll call it, that Grandma had, where she had the little parcel of land around the house, and,
yes,
and grew a lot of the food.
Yes, it was a very small piece of land, but it produced quite a bit of food. And this is a woman who was uneducated. She was a peasant. So was my grandfather on my father's side. And they came. They had a piece of property. They did everything. They grew food. They made wine. They made beer. They made anisette. They made vinegar. They had chickens. This is all in the Bronx. And then they moved from that location, and I think it was Williams something or other, not Williamsburg.
That's Brooklyn.
In the Bronx, and moved to where I grew up. We didn't have chickens, but we had everything else. We had fruit trees, and one year we even tried to grow corn. And my grandmother did a lot of canning, and everything was fresh. And the woman lived to 96 years old. We ate very, very well.
Now you have the extended family in the same house.
Same house around the corner. My cousins a mile away. My grandparents on that block where my grandparents lived. There were relatives by marriage, so there were both sides of the families. On one complete side of the block, there were 4 houses on that block. 3 of those houses were family-oriented, related, somehow either by blood or marriage. So there was sort of this village idea, and it was really a good time for me. So. Like any other family, things happen, and then people go their own way, and stuff occurs. But the core of my existence at that time, up until I was about 12 years old, was really family, and that is the core of who I am today. Is like I think that the family is the end all for me, and I don't know if that's really happening anymore. I mean, we're trying to get back to it in some way.
I think some of us are trying to get back in that direction, but I'm not sure whether we're heading back in that direction as much as maybe some other parts of the world, some of the old world societies, the European nations and Japan, is maybe trending away from that, whereas they've been with extended families where, in fact, the grandparents raised their grandchildren while mom and dad are out working, and you just flip a generation so that so every time there's a new generation, the grandparents take on that role of raising the grandkids, which frees the parents to be the principal bread earners of the house, and being raised by your grandparents can be a really wonderful experience as long as they're willing participants.
I had that experience, and it was a great experience. I cherish it. I had a grandmother that lived downstairs, and on my mother's side, my grandfather and grandmother were just a mile away or so, and all within walking distance or taking a local Bronx city bus. My grandfather never drove a car, and that was very interesting. Until the day he died, he never had a car. He never drove a car. He walked or took the bus everywhere. And so in that respect, it was sort of a small area. It is a spread out culture, and I think we're paying heavily for that. The idea of the mom and pop shop is pretty much dead. But then again, I think there is a certain revitalization of the idea of locally grown, locally made. That's taking on a life of its own.
The notion certainly has gotten a lot of traction. The notion of not carrying through that notion, but the notion is definitely out there. And from a kid's perspective, I mean, let's face it, any kid, I think, I was going to say nine kids out of 10 who's had a lot of close comfort with their parents and their grandparents, I bet 9 kids out of 10 would say that of their grandparents or their parents, the grandparents are much cooler.
Yeah, it's a different relationship altogether.
Yeah,
and grandparents can always say, well, they can push.
Yeah, they don't have to do the disciplining, so they can be kind of they can be kind of the role models and take less of that discipline role on while they're being positive role models.
I'd like to see a lot more of that. I love all of that. I love, this time of year, of course, Christmas time, families come together for good or bad. And I think that the idea of cooking together and sharing that meal with people is really, it's so important for young people to sit down to a real meal. And Once again, I see that's waned quite a bit. I see it in my own personal life with people I'm involved with and their kids, and I shake my head a lot, and I even say things sometimes, and they say, "Well, what do you want me to do?" Well, be a parent.
Isn't that kind of self-evident what you want them to do? What anybody
and that's
would
what
want?
it is. It just seems to me parents aren't parents anymore. They just go, "Oh, what do you want me to do?" Well, a child is so distracted with all kinds of electronic things, tablets and pads and iPhones, and it's just out of control. I see one kid that the son of a friend of mine. He literally walks around with a laptop in his hand and a cell phone, and distraction is not the word. I mean, it's to get that child to eat properly, just to sit down is a chore in itself. I think at some point in time that will come back to haunt that child. It's in some way or somehow that socialization skills, listening skills, being engaged to having a conversation with another human being, such as we're doing, isn't there. And if you go to certain coffee houses in this community or around this country, people are not engaging in conversation like I used to experience growing up. They're too busy with their electronic gear, and they're distracted by that. And if people sit alone, and if you ask to sit with them, it's like you're invading my space.
How do you gauge a person that you're conversing with if you don't have that eye contact and that nearness, that physical nearness to gauge body language, to make eye contact? How do you communicate if you don't have those things?
Observed something today up in a cafe place up in Westport. There's this new trend to do this.
Fist bump, yeah.
And I thought to myself, I saw these two older guys, they were like in their late 60s, doing this. And I thought, well, that's really weird. I see all kinds of young people do that.
Yeah.
And,
seems a bit odd, yeah.
But then I thought, I don't think I'll ever do that again with somebody, because what it does is it sends a message to me. It's like, I really don't want to engage you or touch you.
It's a pushing
because if I shake your hand, my energy towards you is a whole different thing. I have to feel your hand. I have to feel who you are. You have to feel some kind of connectivity.
The softness of the palm.
Something has to happen there. But if I just go like this, I'm just like, no, that's not cutting it for me.
It's one step away from a boxing match.
And then other things I observe of people on the phone, and it's the end of a conversation, and somebody will say, "Love you." And I thought, well, do you really love the person on the other side of the phone? Because you didn't really use the proper pronoun. You don't own it. Did you say, "I love you"? You see, if I say "I love you" to you, I own it. It's me that loves you.
It conveys the full message, doesn't it?
Well, yes, but if I say to you, "Love you," love you what? Who love me? I don't want to hear that. I want you to own the words, "I love you."
It's an interesting observation.
I want to hear that you, in a singular person, I love you. And we have so far, it's just, everyone uses the term. Is it understood? I don't think so. I just think it's a way of getting around owning it. Because it takes a lot of responsibility to love somebody. And my premise is that hating someone is so much easier. Because you don't have to do anything. But when you love somebody, there's all kinds of responsibility attached to it. You have to be engaged in that relationship.
Yeah.
But if I hate you for whatever reason, if you wear a turban, or if you have a dot on your head, or if you're not the right color skin, or you're a different religion,
or you've got a Jets cap on and you've got a Giants cap on.
Why do you hate them? I don't know. I just hate them. Well, it's easy. But if I have to take the time to learn about you because you wear a turban and I don't, or you come from a different culture, or you're a different color skin than me, that means I have to engage in your life, figure something out about you, and learn about you. And that takes way too much time, way too much effort, and I have to make an emotional, intellectual decision about that relationship.
So now the flip side of that is that if you take the time, if you flip it around, and you take the time to make the emotional and time investment into getting to know somebody, it makes it much more difficult to hate them. Exactly. And I've met a lot of people in my life that I heard about in advance and kind of knew superficially or secondhand or thirdhand, and my impression of them going into meeting them was not a very positive one. I mean, my expectations were that I was going to dislike this person for whatever number of things that I had heard about them, and come to meet them and sit down and talk with them a little bit, and I say to myself, what was I thinking?
Right, and
this is a nice person. I like this person.
Right, and that goes across the board with everything. If since I'm in the food business, I deal with food quite a bit, at many levels, and you say to someone, do you like asparagus? Do you like artichokes? No, I hate them. And I go, did you ever taste them? No. Well, how do you know? How do you know you don't like asparagus? How do you know? It's the same thing. Have you ever dated a black woman? No, I don't like black people. I don't like black women. Well, how do you know? Did you ever taste? Did you engage? Did you look? Did you taste? Did you smell? Did you take the time to experience something outside of your comfort zone?
And that is not just evident to you and me, but there's Joel Osteen, if you've ever heard of Joel Osteen, who I always thought of as being very right-wing and very narrow-minded, because intuitively I know from the Baptist Christians, deeply Christian in their own mind's eye, Baptists are generally a lot of them are pretty narrow-minded. But one morning I'm flicking through the channels and I happen to catch a show of his. And on the show he's preaching to people that if you don't like fishing, try fishing. You might like it. If you don't like the opera, go to the opera. You might find you like it. Step outside of your comfort level. Have a conversation with someone that maybe you don't think you might get along with. Have a conversation with them, and you might find that you've made a new friend of someone that you thought you would never, ever like. And I'm thinking to myself while I'm watching this, holy crow, boy, does this guy sounds really liberal to me. I mean, he sounds very open-minded, liberal in the classic sense of being open-minded. And it really touched my heart to hear this guy, Joel Osteen, saying these things. He talked about his father, how he wanted to bring his father to see speaking of black women, a petite black woman who was a revivalist, who had a Christian revival show. He took Dad kicking and screaming to watch this show, and Dad wanted to be back at the back of the audience so he could skip out when he was good and ready really quickly to skip out. He could leave. Dad ends up learning an awful lot about someone that he never thought he would appreciate, and likes it.
Life has to be a smorgasbord.
Oh, a smorgasbord, yeah.
And you have to go about it. You have to taste, experience everything you possibly can, because the experience of oneself is so limited.
Oh, yeah.
And to deny yourself anything other than constant experiences that enhance and further you along in life, that you can share with others in return.
Yeah.
It's worth it, because it's you don't know when it's going to be taken from you. And so to sit around thinking that this guy, because of his ethnic or religious makeup or whatever it may be, or sexual orientation, is a threat or cannot bring something wonderful to your life is such a stupid, arrogant idea of living one's life that I could ever imagine. And I am so happy that whatever happened to me in the Bronx, that I had that opportunity to have that education, because it really enlightens you to see things and be with people and experience things that you just wouldn't have otherwise.
Wow. Yep.
I had this experience, I guess it's over 10 years ago, when there was a big blackout in New York City.
Yeah.
I had taken my girlfriend's little sports car and drove down to the city to go see a concert. It was a girls group in Central Park, and I was coming across 75th Street, because I knew the block. 74th Street always had a good parking spot.
About the northern latitude of the Museum of Natural History.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I was on the east side.
Okay.
So I'm on the east. I'm parking. I'm going. The lights are out. The street lights are out. I didn't really figure out what was going on yet. So I parked the car and I got out of the car. And there was something about. I said, "Oh, it's something." I walked down to Madison Avenue and there were people out. I said, "Blackout! Wow!" Go to the concert. canceled. I milled around a little bit just to be in the excitement of people coming out of the buildings. I get back in the car. I'm going up to 96th Street to get on the FDR. And the guy's standing there with a sign that says CT, Connecticut. And I say to him, "Where are you going?" He goes, "I'm going to Westport." And I say, "I'm going to Westport." He goes, "How much?" And I say, "How much for what?" I said, "To take me back to Westport." I said, "I'm going to Westport.
Yeah.
Get in." So he goes, okay. So he gets in. We're driving. We're now on the Merritt. He goes, "I'll buy you gas." I said, "I'll buy my own gas." And we get to the Westport train station. Now he called his wife, and he says, I got back. He was like thanking me like crazy. We exchanged business cards.
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Play it forward. If you see somebody on the street that's homeless, hungry, don't give them money. Just go in the store.
Do something for them.
Buy some food, sandwich, and hand it to them. And be done with it."
Yeah,
man, I'll do that. 3 months later, I'm on Metro North coming back from the city, going to Westport.
Yeah.
And I'm standing there holding the pole, and I see the guy. He sees me. So I wave. He waves back. He gets up, comes towards me. I said, "Did you ever buy anybody a sandwich?" Not hello, how are you, what's new? He goes, "No, I never had a chance." So.
Never had the opportunity to buy someone a sandwich.
Right. In the 3-month period since the blackout. So this is the kind of thing about bringing people together, experiencing different things. I helped him play it forward all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. Not just because somebody did something for you, and that's what this culture needs. It needs to know that Occupy Wall Street is only saying we want to play it forward.
Yeah,
and we want. This is a big country, and if we're going to live up to the words that are on the Statue of Liberty, then we should live up to the words that are on the Statue of Liberty, and not just have a nice statue out there with a beacon of light for folks that are coming here. I met a guy working cooking. He is he's essentially a dishwasher / cook, and I have never met. He's from Costa Rica.
Yep.
The nicest, most respectful, hardworking human being I ever laid eyes on. He just got married recently. I only know him from working in this place once a week over several months, and we've started a small friendship. He invited me to his wedding.
Wow.
I guess it's a month and a half ago. And I got to go into the inner workings of his culture, of that wedding. I mean, it was everybody from somewhere, Central America, Costa Rica. It was a very Spanish, Hispanic kind of wedding. And I would have never had that experience if I didn't engage in this guy's life. When I put something cooking into that dishwasher, say I'm using a sieve, and something is sticking into the sieve, I don't just throw it in the dish on his pile. I take the water and I squirt out what's ever stuck in it, so that when he goes to wash it, he doesn't have to spend 20 minutes scrubbing something that's dried in the screen. And I know he digs that. I know he appreciates that, because it's a little thing, and he appreciates the fact that someone's paying attention to him in that little silly moment. And we have moved so far away from that in so many respects in this culture that people are just inundated and blinded by whatever they're listening to, what's ever preoccupying their mind, and some kind of media blitz that's going on in their heads. And I think the more we get getting back to making things ourselves, cooking for ourselves, sewing for ourselves, and eliminating any third-party infiltration of who we want to be as people, and enjoying each other for our strengths, because the strength of really the only natural resource America has is its diversity.
And it sounds like you're saying taking that, we've grown into this age of specialization, and you want to take that full circle and grow into an age of diversification. Diversity in this culture is its number one strength. China is not a diversified country in the sense that, yes, there are many languages being spoken, there are many ethnic groups there, but it's still China. It doesn't have the same kind of mix that we do. And
people in this culture need to understand that we are a people of diversity, and that's the strength, because we get everything we need from that. You would never have a Michael Jackson in Africa. He could never have come out of Africa as an African person, because he didn't. That's not the makeup. That's not what made him be. He became Michael Jackson because he's an American, African American. He took that magic of African rhymes and rhythms and music and beats, mixed up with this language called English and this culture that just is like it's a whirlwind of expressions, and you get Michael Jackson. What greater gift could that be? And that's what we do with everything here. We do it with food, we do it with fashion, we do it with architecture. And we're not really celebrating it in a way that I think we need to do.
That's a lot to digest. That's a lot to digest. And you always bring such great notions to Progressive Soup, and have always been such a great friend of the show that I feel quite excited about the day we met and all that revolved around that with what was going on in my life.
Don't leave that one alone.
And going on in your life. And we met of course, through our good and dear friend Sal Liccione. And,
good old Sal.
Who's who's quite a character, right?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is. He's
it's a huge amount to digest, and I'm sure we'll probably draw you back into doing the show again sometime again in the future soon, and continue the conversation.
Thank you.
Dan Lanzilotta.
Dave.
I'm David Stevenson, Progressive Soup. Dan Lanzilotta and my buddy.
Bison.
Excellent. Okay, good night.
Thank you.